Welcome to episode 14. Stick around to hear a bit of this.
Who's going to police the thing?
And a bit of that.
Wow, that's one of the lamest rock and roll anecdotes I've ever heard.
Hello, all you rock and metal heads. Welcome.
Not on our show, Mr. Artificial Intelligence. You can clear right off. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Proper Pyrotechnics, your number one rock and metal music podcast, brought to you by Fireworks Rock and Metal magazine. Issue 104 is out, but it's sold out online, so if you want a hard copy, it's W.H. Smith's or McCall's. You can still buy a digital copy, however, at our website, fireworks-magazine.com. We'd like to thank everybody who has bought this magazine for making it such a success that it is, and all we can say is, if you think 104 was good, just wait till 105. Joining me tonight are my usual co-hosts. We have Deputy Editor Dave Cockett, and we have Art Editor James Gaden. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
As you may have gathered from the little intro skit, the main focus of this podcast is about AI in music. Is it welcome, or is it an unwanted visitor? Recently, the great Sir Brian May, or God, as James and I like to call him, spoke on this, and in all fairness, when Sir Brian opens his mouth, you listen. As on music matters, he does speak a lot of sense. Speaking to Guitar Player magazine, he said, "My major concern with it now is in the artistic area. I think by this time next year, the landscape will be completely different. We won't know which way is up. We won't know what has been created by AI and what has been created by humans. Everything is going to get very blurred and very confusing. And I think we may look back on 2023 as the last year when humans really dominated the music scene. I really think it could be that serious. And that doesn't fill me with joy. It makes me feel apprehensive, and I'm preparing to feel sad about this." His bassist and vocalist, Gene Simmons, has also chimed in when he was asked if he was excited or worried about artificial intelligence, particularly relating to the music business. As normal, Gene gave a rather long-winded answer, but did eventually say, "AI creates a song using my voice, or what sounds like my voice, with a new song, and it sounds just like me, and it definitely sounds like the kind of thing I would do. So when you buy it, who owns the copyright and the publishing if AI did it? So is it me, because it sounds like me? You could swear it was me. So these are indeed uncharted territories." In April of this year, Universal Music had a song called "Heart on My Sleeve," which used deep fake vocals from their artists Drake and The Weeknd removed from the streaming services, claiming in a statement that the training of generative AI using our artists' music was a violation of copyright law. So, are there any artists that appear to stand up for it? Well, yes, kind of. Pop singer Grimes, and if the chaps can tell me who their real name is.
Not got a clue.
Never heard of him.
It's Claire Boucher. There you go, Claire Boucher, otherwise known as Grimes. Anyway, she recently said and tweeted she will split 50% royalties on any successful AI-generated song that uses her voice. "Same deal as I would with any artist I collaborate with. Feel free to use my voice without penalty." So it already appears that this is an area that is going to create great debate. But let's be fair, AI has already been used in the music business anyway with videos. Within Temptation, and their latest one's a great example. And we've also seen it as well in mainstay TV, the latest Marvel series, The Invasion. That was all AI video introductions. So the question is, does AI have a place in music in any facet? From creating songs, lyrics, videos, album covers, should it all be done by the artists themselves, or is it an acceptance now of modern technology simply being initiated into current practices? Are Brian and Gene right to be worried? James, what do you think?
It seems it's everywhere at the moment. We've seen it with films, and that's why there's been writer strikes and stuff like that, because it's like, oh, we'll just pay for one day's work, and then we've got that, and we can use that for as much as we like. We'll make you do, and people are rightly saying, no, that's not right. It's crept into the software I use for layouts. Photoshop now has AI in it, which some of it's helpful, and other things you're like, why am I even here then? And that's where we are with music. There's examples where I think it's really cool and it's really useful. And one of the examples I give would be the one that Paul McCartney did a few months ago. He found a tape that Yoko Ono had given him, which had a John Lennon demo on that nobody had ever heard. And the reason nobody had ever heard it was because it was John Lennon's vocal, and I think there was some piano on it and some guitar, but they didn't have the multi-tracks. It was just the audio of that, and it needed cleaning up. And years ago, him and George Harrison had intended to try and turn it into a finished song. And they're like, we can't get the vocal isolated. It's a mess. We'll just have to leave it. It's one for the books. It could have been, but isn't. AI has allowed Paul McCartney to take John Lennon's voice out of that and turn them into isolated tracks. So the AI has figured out this is John's voice, that's the guitar, that's the piano. Now you've got your multi-tracks, allowing Paul McCartney to now go in and rebuild the instrumentation and polish it into what would effectively be an unheard new Beatles song. And it's still John Lennon's voice. It's not a fake voice, it's the actual John Lennon. So in that respect, I think that's amazing. That would be any Beatles fan would give the right arm to hear that. Oh, there's one more song I've never heard. That's amazing. The way where I'd cross the line is if Paul McCartney then decided, yeah, we'll use AI to, mimic John Lennon's voice and sing a song that I've just written yesterday in the bath and then pass it off as John Lennon. It's not. That's a computer imitating John Lennon. And there's loads of these on YouTube. And that's what I find a little bit disconcerting. If members of the public are just banging them on YouTube, that's just the technology that normal people could get their hands on. What is being sat on behind the scenes? I've found some on YouTube and they're absolutely bizarre. It's like, listen to Freddie Mercury sing Let It Go from Frozen, which obviously he never did. But when you listen to it, that's what it sounds like. There's the odd notes where you think, yeah, that's not right. It sounds a little bit fake, a little bit auto-tuned. But 99% of it does sound like Freddie Mercury. And there was another one, it was like Robert Plant singing Welcome to the Jungle. And that's exactly what it sounded like. And I'm like, this is weird. It's kind of interesting, but it's really weird. And when I was reading some of the comments to these videos, there was people saying, oh, Robert would have been great in Guns N' Roses. And yeah, okay, you can maybe say that in sort of a fantasy band kind of thing. But then there's other people going, do Robert Plant doing Child in Time, do Ian Gillan singing Dark Side of the Moon, and people actually making requests. And I was like, oh, why would you want to hear that? I'm not interested. And it's not them singing it. That if you said to Ian Gillan, sing Dark Side of the Moon, he's not going to sing it any other way as how Ian Gillan would sing it. And the computer wouldn't know that. All it would do is map his voice to the notes that were on the original. And that's not real. It's like, that's the Matrix nonsense. So if it's used as a tool to make something previously unavailable, like, a lost Beatles song, a lost Elvis song, then I think that's great. That should be embraced. But that does open the door for somebody somewhere to do one of these fake, deep fake, we found this lost song by David Bowie, and it's not at all. It's a computer that's done it, but we're putting it out. Go buy this David Bowie's unreleased track, and it's not. It's all fake. And how would you know? So that's where I draw the line. I think as a tool, if it can give you something, fine. But the creation of new material, no, not for me. That should be a human thing.
I mean, I agree. I personally kick AA out. That's what I say. I'm old fashioned. I mean, I got to admit I am. But I think if you're the band, you sing the songs, you do the videos, you do your cover, you do everything. There's no room for this AI malarkey at all. Dave, go on. Give us your take.
Firstly, I agree with what James said about what Paul McCartney did with the John Lennon track. To use AI as some sort of forensic archaeologist type of program to separate the tracks so that you could then reconstruct them and make it what Lennon would have wanted it to sound like. Although, to be fair, how does Paul McCartney know any different what it would have finally ended up as does the computer? There we go. That's acceptable. But when you start saying to the machine, okay, off you go, you write me a song, that's when we start getting a bit into sort of like Terminator territory, as far as I can see. But it's nothing new. I mean, if you're looking at technological advances in the music industry, go back as far as somebody plugging electric socket into a guitar. Go back to the first synthesizers. Go back to drum machines. How many drummers did drum machines put out of a job? But it's not only that. What we're really talking about there is something that somebody can program to substitute for something else because it's cheaper and it's quicker. What we're talking about here is a machine that comes along and can create something that's supposedly new that we've not all heard before. Now, as I say, it's nothing new. Have you guys ever heard of an American guy called David Cope, professor of music, I think, at Santa Cruz in California? He's been doing this sort of thing for 40 years. He was experiencing, I think, back 1980, a bit of writer's block as a musician, and he works in the classical field. And he wanted to come up with something, that was new and innovative, but in a sort of Beethoven, Bach, etc., sort of way. And he couldn't come up with anything. So he sat in front of his computer, and he's been actually doing this sort of thing for 40 years. He's been trying to get his computers to write classical pieces. Now, what he seems to where is it? It actually tells me somewhere. It's almost like every bit of music is plagiaristic, because it's all inspired by something that somebody has heard before. Therefore, if you say to a computer, okay, here are 1,000 pop songs that have been number one, you write me something that sounds like them that'll be a future number one. And I get that. I get that the technology is readily available to be able to do that. I think the question is, should it? Not can it, because it absolutely can and will. And we can rail against it as much as we like. But three old farts sat here on a Saturday night in the pub saying that we can't do this ain't going to change a hill of beans, because there's too much money behind it. And that's what ultimately it comes down to. It comes down to this. If you pay somebody for a computer program, pay it as a one-off, you can use it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. You're no longer paying anybody any royalties. So all the money that comes from it is more of the money that comes from anything it generates is left in the hands of the record companies or the fat cats or the millionaires or whatever. I don't think it should be something that's feared, but on the other hand, I don't think it should be something that we should really take that seriously either. But ultimately, it will come down to choice. Do we have something almost like a traffic light signalling system like they do in food? Do we have something that says on a record, produced by machines, produced by people? Make your choice. I'd always pick something that's produced by people, because music's supposed to come from the soul. Although I get, if you're creating something that you're going to push forward as a new song or a new album or whatever, it's always going to be tinted by what you listen to, what's inspired you. I think that the really interesting thing would be is if you got the AI there and said, right, okay, this is all the music knowledge that we've got from the world. These are all the songs, these are all the sounds. You come up with something that we've never heard before, and we'll tell you if it's any good. That is the tipping point for me, because if they come up with some innovation that we've never heard, that people go along and say, yeah, I quite like that. How can you argue with that?
Well, I'd say that to that, right? So, like Pete mentioned the example with The Weeknd and Drake that was done as like a duet, even though none of them were involved. So, what's the end game if a record company does that? Because if you make this fake song, so let's say, all right, it's basically like Milli Vanilli, isn't it? You've created these two like artists that don't exist, and you put them together on a track, and we'll bang it on Spotify. You can't tour that because there's nobody there, and people aren't buying the albums. So what's the point? It's like, what? I don't understand why. Because, like you say, everything's motivated by money. So where's the profitability in doing that?
Because it's a product that you can sell. Ultimately, it's like anything. It's like any of these people that start out in the music business, start out as artists, start out struggling, start out playing to disinterested audiences or two. Their attitude changes when they're filling arenas and playing to 20, 25,000 people on a regular basis. It then becomes more of a job, less about the creativity and more about sustaining it. And whilst that's not a criticism of artists, it's a criticism of the fact that we've got an industry that promises the dream that everybody who wants to be a musician can fill 25,000 seat stadiums, because it can't. It's probably probably a lower turnover rate than actors in terms of success. So it's the people who, it's clever ways to make money, to sell you a product, and they don't see it as music. Increasingly, it's our product. We have this that we can sell. How much can we make of it? And what it sounds like, what it looks like, they could increasingly care less, I think. It's sad, but that's the way we're going.
That's where I think it'd fall down, because people like ourselves who are really into music, if somebody says, right, so this record label come along and they invent this AI digital rock band that doesn't have any real members, and it turns out to what is, in all intents and purposes, a really good rock record, I doubt any of us would actually buy it, because you'd be like, there's no fucking humans on this. So when you're in the pop market, pop doesn't sell physical units, anything like rock does. Pop fans tend to stream. They don't tend to go out and buy CDs anymore, and certainly don't. They just stream everything on Spotify. So are they then going to think, well, the next step then, like we've seen holograms on tour, you go see some AI bunch of avatars performing a song. Would people be prepared to pay for that? I'm sure a percentage would, because, like I say, I've never understood why you go see a hologram live, because you're not seeing Elvis or Dio or whoever it is. You've seen a recording. And if there was no original person in the first place, you're just going to have a bunch of avatars playing what the AI created. Total waste of time in my book.
I would agree with you. I could put no argument against that at all, James. But the biggest problem is that whilst you said that the rock market's quite big, it's not, and the pop market in comparison is much more moderate, much more transient, shall we say. The songs in the rock market that are selling are 25, 30, 45 years old.
Yeah.
There's no, where's the next AC/DC? Where's the next Sabbath? Where's the next Zeppelin? Where's the next track that's going to come into a popular TV series going to come from? Unless you get something like Wigwam, which was brilliant. The placing that they got there, but it's a 1 in a million shot. And I think that what we're looking at increasingly as our generation gets older, shuffles off this mortal coil, I firmly believe that music itself will become less important, sadly. And I think that this is just another indicator of that. It's just a cheap way to make a product. It's just manufacturing it on a huge scale for peanuts. It's like the argument of the old Japanese car factory. That their ultimate aim was that you would have a car factory that was run by computers, staffed by robots, and it'd have one man and a dog. Dog would be there to stop anybody breaking and pinching the robots. The man's there to feed the dog. It's sad, but it's true.
What about the morality of it all? If we're saying that, you know, AI can be used for certain things, I mean, what about the morality of the situation? Like you say, somebody scrupulous decides they found a David Bowie, a lost David Bowie, as one of you guys said, and then tries to pass it off as genuine. I mean, it's so totally wrong. There's no honesty about that at all. But if we're saying, you know, AI can be used for this, that, and the other, you know, who's going to police this? You know, where are we going to get these morality checks? Where are we going to get these? You know, this isn't a proper David Bowie one. This isn't a proper Freddie Mercury one. This isn't a proper, artist of whoever. I mean, it goes back to the porn things in some respects, doesn't it? The actresses are worried that they're going to get in all these scenes with their face merely deep faked onto people. I mean, we saw it in The Crow, didn't we, with Brandon Lee? I think that was one of the first uses of it, wasn't it, when his face was put on after, obviously, the tragic accident. Yeah. And actresses have said, you know, exactly the same. You know, we don't want to suddenly be appearing in scenes doing things where, A, it's not us, and B, all they've done is taken our face and put it on someone else's body. Mm-hmm. The same principle in music. You know, how do we know that David Bowie's done this? How do we know that Freddie Mercury's done this? How do we know that whoever's done it has done it? Who's going to police the thing?
But to backtrack to what you said there, though, Pete, is who's going to police it? First thing is, they've not got a handle on policing the internet yet. So when you start talking about something like this, okay, you might get it in some of the I won't say, I hate to say civilized or developed Western countries that you've got sort of more strict moral laws. But what's to stop some of these other countries now that host all these illegal sites? What's to stop them doing it? There's nothing really. These things are only, as was said, it's uncharted territory. So these things are only going to come to light and be tested when they actually show up and get put through court. And ultimately, it's one of those things. If one guy creates a new David Bowie track, says it's a David Bowie track, nobody else knows it isn't, apart from him. If it goes through the courts and the court says, yes, it is a David Bowie track, the rest of us think it is. So ultimately, when he shuffles off this mortal coil, what difference does it make? Rightly or wrongly? It's like you look at all the old masters, the paintings. How many old masters out there are passed off as Titians or Rembrandts or whatever, that 200, 300 years later, nobody's really got a clue whether they are or they're not. This is just the sort of technological equivalent to that.
For me, it's like when I put together this last issue of Fireworks, I actually used a little bit of AI in it, right? Like I said, Photoshop now has this AI stuff included with it, just as part of the software. And this is what I was experimenting with, so I could understand it a little more. And it's the same kind of thing. The thing I used was a tool which just made things quicker. It wasn't doing anything I couldn't do myself. It just did it for me. So that I consider fine. That's a time-saving thing, because if you took it away, I'd still be able to do it. All it was on one of the spreads, I had to extend the background to go right off the page because there wasn't enough of the photo. So I can manually sit and paint all that in, which is what I would normally do. But with this, I just drew the box saying, I need more of this here. And it went and it did it, and it was like, how's that? And then I said yes or no. So I've still got some control over that, and it's speeding up my workflow. So that, to me, I'm like, it's not doing anything I can't do myself, and I'm still saying, if that's good enough, it's fine. But then the other thing the software allows you to do is it's got what's called text to image. So you can literally go in and say, I want a voluptuous warrior woman in gold armor sat on a unicorn in a magical forest. And it then generates you a picture of that. And I'm like, so what's the point of me even being here? All you need is somebody who can type. So that's gone too far, because now the design part has gone completely out of the equation. It's just somebody typing in random things. And that's where we're at with music. If you can use AI to restore something or make something finished that previously wasn't available to be finished, that's great. But if you're then saying, no, actually, this is what Freddie Mercury sounded like, do a new song with him. That's not a new Freddie Mercury song. That's a facsimile. It's a digital fake.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And somebody coming along and trying to pass off old Beatles songs, old Elvis songs, old Queen songs, or whatever, as recently discovered old material is wrong. What the interesting bit is, though, is if we say to it, okay, you come up with something completely new, be it a song that sounds like this, or would fit that sort of market, or be it a new sort of genre that we've never thought about before. That's the interesting thing to me. Now, would I buy it? Probably not. It's hard to think of where all the subdivisions of rock could go from here. But having said that, when I was a lad, there was heavy rock and there was heavy metal. That was about it. There was very little in between until we sort of discovered the AOR stuff from America, and obviously prog had been sort of sneered at from the 70s. But then it's sort of mushroomed. We've got symphonic rock, we've got speed metal, we've got power metal, we've got gothic metal, we've got this, that, and everything else. It is hard to see where the next innovation in the area is going to come from. But having said that, who would have thought of the sort of sound that we got until Nightwish came up with it, with the operatic female vocals over the sort of symphonic metal sound? So there is always that thing there to be thought of. And it's a question of, will people think of it first, or will AI do it? I suspect the more powerful AI gets, the more likely it is that it would do it, because it can think much faster. But
I think where AI struggle is because every musician I've ever spoken to has always said that when you play music and it's aligned to the grid and it's all quantized, so it's literally perfect and totally in time and totally in pitch and totally in key, it doesn't sound as good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though it should, technically, because from a mathematical point of view or whatever, it's perfect. It lacks that human thing. It lacks the imperfections that make records good. And that's what I don't think AI will be able to do. Because by its very nature, it'll be perfect.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of threshold that we're on now. What we're at the threshold now where we've got machines that can mimic. What we're talking about now is it really is the sort of Terminator thing. Machines that can think for themselves and make their own decisions completely without our input. That's where AI comes in. Ultimately, at the moment, there's always some guy in charge that can say yes, no, turn it off. It's when we get to a stage where you've got a machine that's sat there thinking for itself, doing whatever it wants, saying you come anywhere near my plug and I'm going to zap you. That's when we get to the stage where that we're talking about here, that it is thinking for itself. But I don't think we need to worry about any sort of music come those days, because ultimately, I think it will have seen the Terminator and thought, yeah, that's the answer to that problem.
So if I gave you two songs, one done by a human band and one done completely by AI, and didn't tell you which ones were what, and, you know, you guys like the AI one, and then I told you it was AI, what would your opinion, you know, what would your response to that be? Would you go, oh, actually, no, not happy with that, no, it's AI? Or would you before, you know, oh, yeah, that's fine, jog on?
If
I'd be pleasantly surprised, I think.
I'd be sure.
Yeah.
Because
so Dave's pleasantly surprised and you're shocked, James.
Yeah, because I would fancy my chances to be able to spot which one's the AI. And the reason I say that is because when I listen to some of these ones on YouTube where it's like, yeah, Robert Plant sings Welcome to the Jungle, or Freddie Mercury sings this, or they've swapped them round. I know that, yes, it tells me on the video that this is an AI cover, if there is such a thing. But I know it's told me that. But when you listen to it, as a fan of these artists, you can hear things that you just think they wouldn't have done that. That's not right. That's fake. Like there was a certain note that Freddie hit, and because basically the AI has just taken the original melody and just made Freddie follow it, and he hit one note, and I was like, Freddie would never have gone for that note. He'd have taken that down half a step, and he'd have done this because I've listened to that much Freddie Mercury. I think I know how he would have sung it better than the computer, because the computer's not thinking like Freddie. The computer's just saying, take this voice and put it on this melody. And there was parts of it that just sounded artificial, for want of a better word.
I get that. I get where you're coming from there, and I would totally agree with you. Firstly, I would like to think I'd be able to pick it out. And secondly, if you're applying it to an artist that we all know and love, I would agree with you. Again, I would think that if you're saying this is a Long Lost Saxon track or a Deep Purple track or even a Celine Dion track or something like that, that we'd all be able to tell the difference. But what I think that what we're talking about longer term is something that actually is new, somebody we've not heard of. Fred Bloggs and his Exploding Scrotum or whatever, something like that. This is their latest song, and it comes out and you think, yeah, that's pretty cool. What have you got to compare it against?
Honestly, I'd buy that just for the title.
Yeah. But again, this goes back to the thing. So we've already said that there's Freddie Mercury singing Let It Go or whatever, and Ian Gillan singing, you know, whatever. Where's the morality in that? Where is the morality in putting someone else's voice in someone else's song? And obviously, you know, Freddie Mercury's not here to be able to do it properly. And then putting it on YouTube. When does this stop? You know, who is going to say, actually, no? You know, Freddie's not sung that. Freddie would never sing that. It is not Freddie. It is a computer, you know, doing Freddie voice, synthesizing, etc., etc. But where's the legality of putting someone else's voice on someone else's track and then plunking it on YouTube? Who is going to moderate this? Who's going to stop it? I mean, we can see it happening already, can't we? I mean, you think about it. Bon Scott or somebody suddenly coming out of a song, you know, and saying, oh, it's a long lost thing, you know. And somebody who's unscrupulous raking in the profits from this, you know, it just smacks of being so wrong.
I'd agree with you, Peter. It does, but the problem is that you're judging everybody else by your moral compass, and the fact is that the vast majority of people probably don't, or probably haven't got that sort of moral compass. It's increasingly like all sorts of areas of law. The law struggles to keep up with technology in all sorts of fields, and this is just the latest one. I mentioned sort of glibly earlier about policing the internet. They've not got a handle on these illegal downloading sites. It would be okay if it was contained, let's say, within the UK or within North America or within the EU or somewhere like that. The powers that be would have better powers to actually stop these things. Unfortunately, they could be situated anywhere. And until global law enforcement organizations are given the powers to stop these things, it'll all just continue to happen. Because you're talking about people that predominantly come from less fortunate, poorer countries, and they can see it as an easy way to make a buck. And I kind of get that, but the moral argument goes out the window. I would agree with you. Nobody should be allowed to use Freddie Mercury's voice, for example, on anything that Freddie Mercury didn't sing. No argument from me, but it's one of those sorts of things. The songs themselves would have been copyrighted and trademarked. The voice wasn't. Voice has never been trademarked. So you try using a sample of a Queen song in a track and you'll get sued.
Yeah.
You try using Freddie Mercury's voice to sing somebody else's song put through a computer, and first thing these days is people will laugh at it because it's a novelty. But you're right, the long-term implications are, does somebody at some point from that represents Freddie Mercury's estate saying, hang on a minute, you're trying to pass this off as Freddie Mercury? And that's what we need to get towards, is we need to get towards organisations to have those sorts of powers. And as I said, I can see that working in the UK, in the EU, in places like North America. But it's when you get to other parts of the world, how are you going to enforce it?
And speaking on the morality side of things, the way you said there, Pete, about, passing it off as if this was the record labels have been doing that sort of thing for it, not using AI necessarily, but Dave probably remember this with him being a big Thin Lizzy fan. There was a Thin Lizzy compilation that came out a few years back, and it included a song on it that he claimed was a unreleased Thin Lizzy track, and it was some Grand Slam song or
Dedication.
That was it, yeah. And they passed it off as it was Thin Lizzy, and it wasn't at all. It was long after Freddie left.
Yeah. That was definitely the thin end of the wedge.
Yeah, and it's the same kind of thing. It'd be like, oh yeah, this is an old song, Honest, and you're like, so for me, I think there needs to be disclaimers clearly. So if people want to listen to some track where it'll take some random pop artist and marry it up with somebody who doesn't even exist, and it's a new duet. If people want to listen to that, fine. As long as it's clearly stated that's what it is. It's when they don't, that's when we're getting into real murky waters.
So you saying that's got to be the music company's responsibility? That's got to be up to them to sort of say, listen, we either don't want AI in the business, or you sort of say everything now has got to have a disclaimer on it. These are humans singing. This is a computer singing. This is this. This is this. Is it now purely down to the music companies to take responsibility?
Yeah, I would say so. It'd be like, if I was to use a hypothetical, like we was just talking about Freddie Mercury. So when Freddie died, the remaining members of Queen went and made the Made in Heaven album using whatever they had left over. Mm-hmm. And there was a song on there called Mother Love. And Freddie had sung like the first bit and he didn't have the strength to finish it. So the rest of the song is sung by Brian May. If Queen then used AI to do that verse that Brian May sang to sound like Freddie, and they said, it's Freddie, except that bit, which we've made sound like Freddie. If they were open and honest, people would give it a listen. But if they just put it out and said nothing, that's when it becomes unscrupulous.
I think the problem is that the terms unscrupulous and music business have been bedfellows for as long as anybody can remember. Yeah. Again, it all goes back to how can we turn a fast book as quickly as possible for doing as little as we possibly can get away with. And this just seems a way that they can do that. It's the next generation of automating certain processes. It goes right back to the days when you started with the weaving sheds in the cotton industry, doing the work that previously 10, 20, 30 people would have done. This is just now the latest version of that. You can do it quicker, you can do it cheaper, You can do it without any unions, without any tea breaks, without having to pay any salaries, and that's what they're looking for ultimately. And to talk about the scruples, it's unfortunately the people with the power to say yay or nay are the ones that are going to profit the most off of this. So I think that they'd be extremely conflicted. I will caveat all of this. I don't agree with it. I don't want anything to do with anything that's generated by AI. Would I buy it? Probably not. I'd like to hear it first. So I'm interested as to where it goes, and I'm interested if it could come up with something new that none of us have ever heard before. I'm not interested in an old Beatles song. I'm not interested in an old Elvis song or Thin Lizzy or whatever. But if you can come with something new, a sound that sounds like music, that's pleasant on the ear, that we're in a sort of style or a direction that we've never heard before, I'd be intrigued to hear it. But apart from that, nah, you can stick it.
If it helps, if it's a tool. So if there's a songwriter and he suddenly gets an idea, or she suddenly gets an idea, or they suddenly get an idea, and they go, right, I need a tempo, 120 beats, 4/4 time, and he just bangs it out so they can get the idea down straight away and then come back to it. I haven't got a problem with that. But if somebody then goes, I want a 3-minute song in the style of Madonna from the 80s, and they've done nothing, what's the point of that?
Agree with you.
So basically, chaps, if Freddie and his exploding scrotum suddenly came out tomorrow as an album,
yeah,
but it did have on the word. It said this album has been done by AI.
Yeah.
So Dave, you would listen to it, but you wouldn't buy it.
What I would expect is Freddie and his exploding scrotum in brackets copyrighted by Dave Cockett underneath, so I get my cut.
What about you, James? Would you be interested? Would you buy that kind of thing?
Certainly wouldn't buy it straight off. I'd maybe listen to a track out of curiosity, but the idea of going out and buying something that had no human on it, I can't envisage that appealing to me in any way. It's like when I watch a lot of films, and we've seen, since CGI was invented, it's become more and more and more prevalent. And there's a Facebook page which is real interesting. It shows you before and after shots from different films, mostly like the superhero films. And so you see like the finished shot, and it's like all amazing. There's like explosions and dragons and all sorts of things. And then you see the actual thing, and it's just one guy in a studio against a green background wearing what's basically a skin tight catsuit with some dots on. And you're like, is that really filmmaking? When I watched Mission Impossible, the newest one with Tom Cruise, and he goes off the cliff on a motorbike, that's not CGI. I know that's Tom Cruise on a motorbike, and that's why it looks awesome. You think, if it's some guy sat on a stationary bike and everything around him is fake and generated, it doesn't interest me. And that's like my superhero films. I used to enjoy them, and now it's just like, more of the same. Because it just seems like Dave said, it's just churned out without any sort of creative endeavor behind it. It's just like, more of that. And that's not the point of filmmaking or songwriting or TV shows. There should be a story to tell, or a point to make, or a feeling to evoke. It shouldn't just be like, let's bang out another one of these. It needs to be in this tempo and this key and sound like that.
And I agree with you entirely. And it's the difference between mass producing products like mobile phones or tellies or cars or whatever, and creating art, be it pictures, be it films, be it TV series, be it music. There should be a difference. There should be subtle differences between all of it. None of it should be. They're all unique. Should all be the same. You can produce 1 million phones and they all look the same and do the same thing. You should be able to produce 1 million songs, and whilst there will be a percentage of them that sound like one another, there will be probably all of them written by AC/DC, but there should be subtle differences between all of them, and that's where I would, from a human perspective, draw the line. But I don't think that we're going to actually. I don't think we're going to stop it. The genie's been out of the bottle for far too long on this sort of thing, and for the advancements of mankind, yes, there are benefits of AI. I think it's quite easy to see what the benefits are, and it could produce some fantastic results in medical fields or whatever, or sort of space exploration and developing new technology over the coming years. There's also a sinister side to it. This is the sort of, if you want, this is the acceptable side to the sinister side of it, in passing music off as something that it isn't. The more worrying things are what other sort of insidious ways would it get into our everyday lives and change what we do, what we are forever. So I'm with the Luddites. Smash the machines.
We are the resistance.
Free hammer for everybody.
Indeed. I mean, the other thing as well is obviously this Claire Butcher, this Grimes, the artist called Grimes, saying that she will split royalties 50% with a successful AI-generated song that uses her voice. I mean, how can you do that? I mean, what's the computer going to do with 50% of royalties? Well,
that's all right, because it'll be on Spotify, so she'll get no royalties anyway. She'll get 50% and nothing.
Unless the computer rigs it.
Yeah.
Presumably somebody somewhere owns the AI program, because it's still a program, ultimately, and that then gets paid the 50% of the royalties.
It'll probably be Google.
Probably be Google. Yeah. Probably be Live Nation.
Elon Musk, it'll be him. Doesn't he own everything else? So, I mean, this is obviously a debate that could go on forever and a day. I mean, there's so many different facets of it. But if I had to put you on the spot, Dave, AI in music, yes or no?
No.
James, AI in music, yes or no?
Yeah, no. The cons outweigh the pros for me.
We agree with Mr. Maiden.
Yeah.
But do we think his prediction, his timeline may be a little bit off? So he put, and I think we might look back on 2023 as the last year when humans really dominated the music scene. Do we think that's a little bit near, or is he just being a bit dramatic there?
I think he's probably off by a couple of years, but not by much.
I suppose it depends on how you measure it as well, because it's like, by what definition of, because if you listen to most of the mainstream chart stuff now, it's auto-tuned beyond recognition anyway. There's that many computers and filters and synths in it that there's very little human in that track. I mean, I saw, I forget the name of it because I'm not into the genre, but there was a rapper, and it was some footage of him at this concert. Thousands of people there, and there was like a crush forming at the front, and he shouted at them to get back. But while he was shouting, he was still auto-tuned. I was like, how talentless do you have to be auto-tuned to rap? But that's like the norm for that genre. You're auto-tuned in the studio, you're auto-tuned on the stage. What are you even doing there, really? Where's the talent? Where's the ability? So in that respect, a lot of modern music now, there's very little human element there at all.
Well, listeners, again, please let us know your views on this. This is a subject, obviously, that we have to worry about. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when you've got people like Brian May and Gene Simmons coming out and saying it, you've got to stand up and take notice. But what are your thoughts on it? Do you want to hear AI in music? Do you want to hear AI-inspired tracks? Replacing humans, as Dave says, is it the rise of the machines? Are we all going to be terminated to death in the next God knows how many years by music coming out? Let us know. Leave comments. But let us know your thoughts and feelings. It's a very scary world, if you ask me, with this kind of stuff taking place. And one thing I do want to ask James as well, because I use Photoshop an awful lot, and I know exactly the tools you're on about. You design album covers, and very good album covers. Some of the best that I've seen. 50 quid in the post, please, if you don't mind. But when you see this AI coming on, and like you rightly said, you just have to tell it that you want a 3-breasted alien riding barefoot on a pink unicycle, doing this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden it produces this amazing cover. Do you not fear for your job?
A little bit. The one thing I've got in my favour at the moment is it generates it, but I then decide whether it's good enough or not. It can be used as a tool. It can be quite helpful. For example, I had to do a mock-up of an idea that this band wanted. It ultimately didn't get used, so it doesn't matter. But they wanted it to look like a highway in the 60s going down towards like the California Pacific coastline, and they wanted like like a muscle car, like a Mustang or something on one side of the road, and a VW Beetle with a surfboard on the other side, like crossing over. Quite a specific brief, and I had to create that from scratch. And I managed to source the various bits and bobs eventually because they wanted it like photorealistic. They didn't want me to draw it, and it took me ages to find a Volkswagen Beetle that was the right angle that I needed to drop in onto this photo. So the AI text generator, I could have simply said, I want to set a Volkswagen Beetle viewed from this angle, and it would have made me one.
Yeah.
For that, I would have thought, oh, good. But then that's just one small element of a larger composition that I'm putting together. If I'd have simply gone, what was that you wanted, lads? A couple of cars, Pacific California Highway, yeah, and just type that in and gone, there you go, and then build them. It's like they could have done that themselves. So for me, it can only be a benefit if it's a tool to help the artist. It shouldn't be replacing the artist.
Absolutely. Yeah, that 100% agree. That's the dividing line. Is it a tool that can be used to enhance, or is it something that's replacing it? And that's exactly the same argument that we had last time about miming on stage.
Yeah.
Same difference.
You know, I just had a horrendous feeling that this album with Freddie and his exploding testicles is now going to have a three-breasted alien riding a pink unicycle designed by AI, and we're not going to know any of the difference. Oh, God, that's funny. Right, quick, let's move away from that. That's awful. There's an image I can't get out of my head now. God knows what the song will sound like. Right, chaps, so it's on social media, so it must be true, isn't it? Two ones here that I've asked the chaps to get involved with. So recently we've had Ronnie Atkins delivering some news that he may play selected dates with the Pretty Maids next year. But has he outgrown the Pretty Maids? Does he need them more than they need him? Obviously, he's got a first solo album coming up pretty soon, and the first two have been very successful, let's be fair. And also, Ozzy Osbourne, he's now come out and said that he wants to record one last album and do one last tour in 2024. But is it wise for him to do so? I mean, we all know Ozzy, his health isn't the best, and it's, it looks like it's getting worse, bless him. And although Patient Number 9 wasn't a bad album, it certainly wasn't his best. You know, is it wise that he now stops and maintains the legacy that we all know and love him for, or is he just pushing it now? You know, Dave, what are your thoughts on these two?
In terms of Ronnie Atkins, his relationship with Ken Hammer in Pretty Maids has always been quite fractious. In some regards, it's almost like a mini version of Don Dock and George Lynch. And I think that it's something that happens in more bands than we get to hear about. But I think in some regards, that tension, that friction actually creates great dynamic songs, as the Pretty Maids back catalogue will prove. You can probably guess I've been a big Pretty Maids fan for a long, long time. Does Ronnie need the Pretty Maids more than Ronnie needs his solo career? Undoubtedly. You put Ronnie in the Pretty Maids on as a show, you'll sell more tickets than you would Ronnie Atkins as a solo artist, I think. No disrespect to him as a solo artist. I've got no problem with that. I quite like the 3 albums that he's put out. But I think that there's a core Pretty Maids audience there that more would go to see him fronting Pretty Maids than they would to see him on his own. So I don't think that there's any argument there that that would be a benefit for him to do that. Has he jumped the gun a little bit in terms of announcing it? If you actually read the text a little bit further, he said that there's been problems in the band since 2019, was it? Since the last album, since pre-COVID. There were rumours at one point that when he was diagnosed with cancer, that the band were looking to replace him. Now, there was nothing ever officially announced from Pretty Maids to that effect. Had that been the case, that would have been one of the most heartless decisions I would have ever heard any band ever coming up with. So you could never forgive them for doing something like that. That's just despicable. But nothing ever official came from the band. I don't think anything official ever came from Ronnie, apart from the dismissive comment or whatever. He said that they may do some dates, and I think the key word there is may. They actually now seem to be talking again, and not through lawyers, which is always a good thing. I suppose, would I like to see Pretty Maids do more dates? Absolutely, I'd like to see Pretty Maids do more dates and more albums. Will it actually happen? Don't know. I mean, there's always the caveat that Ronnie's health's an issue. They're all getting older. So will it happen? Hope so, but let's just wait and see. I'll see. Okay. You're quite right. Ozzy's last album was not a bad album, but certainly wasn't his best. He's working with a bunch of outside writers, so it's one of those. It's not the core Ozzy that he was when he first left Sabbath at the end of the 70s into the early 80s. I think Ozzy saying he'd like to record another album and do one more tour. The album, I can see that could probably happen. The tour, if it was half an hour here and half an hour there, a month apart, yeah, maybe. But a grueling tour across continents, never in a million years. It's not going to happen. Ozzy's health just won't allow for it, I don't think. And I think to actually to build that pipe dream and put it out there for people is it's a bit disingenuous, really. It's doing the same thing that they did with the Ozzy and the Judas Priest tour, that they took people's ticket money for however long they did and didn't actually cancel the damn thing until it became readily apparent it had been cancelled a number of times. Yes, COVID got in the way. Had COVID not got in the way, Ozzy may have been able to fulfill his commitments. We're talking 3-4 years ago now. But his health has degenerated since. I don't think he's, personally, I'd like to be proven wrong. If you're listening, Sharon Osbourne, if you'd want to sue me. But I just don't think, from, again, looking at the subtext, that Ozzy's going to be in a position to be able to commit to anything meaningful in terms of a tour, apart from the odd little appearance there or the odd little appearance here. It's just, his health's just not there.
Fair enough. James, would you like to see Ronnie Atkins with Pretty Maids? Or are you quite happy with his solo career? And would you see Ozzy again?
With Ronnie Atkins, obviously he's been battling the cancer, so I think whatever he wants to do now, he should go for it, because that's the right attitude. If he feels he can do some dates with Pretty Maids, I think he should absolutely do it. If he feels he's got another solo album in him, absolutely do it. Because if I was ever stricken with that disease, I would like to try and be as positive as possible. I think that's what, because you've got two options. You need to think, well, I've got this now, so I'm going to make the most of it, or you can just sit there and mope. And it was like Fergie Fredrickson. He continued making albums up right until the end. And I think Ronnie Atkins is of that mindset. He's like, while I'm still here, every day's a blessing. I want to do this, I want to do that. He might think, do some shows with the Pretty Maids, might close the chapter, might be my last time, so I'd like to do it properly. If he can do that, if he feels well enough, I think absolutely he should, and I think lots of people would love to see it. So no problem with that whatsoever. I don't think he should go for one or the other regarding them or his solo career. I don't see why he shouldn't just do as much as he can while he's able. And that brings me to Ozzy. I don't think he can get out of the house nowadays, let alone do a tour. If he wants to make one more album, stay at home and work on making the best album you can possibly make and put that out as your swan song. Don't be going on like, I'd love to do one more tour. Well, that's all well and good, but I could book him for a gig and know that he wouldn't be able to do it. So if he can't do one show, he can't do 200, 300 around the world. It's not going to happen. So his touring days are finished. He's not. You can put up tickets all you like. People will be stupid enough to buy them. Like Dave says, it'll just be somebody hanging on to your money for 2 or 3 months before you go, oh, yeah, sorry, it's cancelled. And you won't get your booking fees back or anything like that. It's a waste of time. He's done. He's not touring anymore. So whatever he says, no chance. If he wants to make another album, yeah, Page Number 9 was all right. Not the best. So I'd work on trying to do the best album I possibly could to go out on a high if I was Ozzy.
I think you're right. I think there's a difference here between us mere mortals that work for a living and musicians or actors. It's absolutely right what they say. For us, it's a job. For them, it's a vocation, which is why the likes of Mick Jagger and that never officially retire. I understand, to touch on Bernie Marsden, who sadly passed away recently. Bernie's got a new album coming out later this year. It was scheduled, and then it was all up in the air when he passed. But I understand that Bernie was one of those who was working pretty much right to the end. And that there are lots of people. You've talked about Freddie Mercury. Freddie was working way beyond when practically he should have done. And I think that's the difference between somebody actually that in this profession. It becomes all consuming, and then they don't know when to stop, which is good in some ways, because it if they've still got that creative urge, then go for it. But I do think at times that the likes of Ozzy, the mouth runs away with them, and makes sort of promises that they're physically just not going to be able to keep.
Indeed, yes. I mean, it did seem a weird statement when he released it, and it's one of those you think, album I can understand, tour, no, not really. Right then, so there we go. Again, listeners, let us know. Should Ozzy tour? Should he not? Should he give it now? Has he got another album in him, do you think? And Ronnie Atkins, does he need the Pretty Maids more than the Pretty Maids need him? And again, what should you do? James made a valid point. Work as much as you can, do what you want. It's a good point. Right then, you've had enough of two old men and one youngster rabbiting on for a bit. So we're going to have and by the youngster, I mean me. No. And we're going to have our inside access band now that we do. We run this little thing on Fireworks about bands that haven't got a deal, but, can still get heard. So this is a song called Coronation by Evership.
For the day, not what may come instead. Things are good.
So there we have it. That was Everships and Coronation. Right then, what have the guys been listening to? What have they been reading? Anything caught their eyes? We are going to lead with James. No, Baker, we're not going to lead with James at all. We're going to lead with Dave for this one. So, Dave, seen anything? Heard anything?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard quite a few little bits of late. The new Sorcerer album is fantastic. It's called Reign of the Reaper. Is it out next month? I can't quite remember. I know I got a copy a couple of weeks ago to review and to speak to him for the next issue of the magazine. But if you like, for want of a better description, epic doom metal, that's full of melody, full of passion, full of melodrama, the new Sorcerer is just fantastic. It seems to be it's the fourth album since they came back in 2015 was the first album. They're a band that originally started in the late 80s. They come from Sweden. They are sort of contemporaries of bands like Candlemass, who were seen as the leaders of this sort of doom metal back in the day, but they never got a deal. Then the 90s came along and they sort of just disappeared. But they were tempted out of retirement, if you like, around about 2010, I think, for a one-off appearance at a festival. And it sort of just grew from there, which seems to be the story in an increasing number of cases of late. But they finally put the debut out back to 2015, I think, and this is the fourth album. But it is the sort of, if you can imagine a cross between Candlemass and Dio and Sabbath, that's where Sorcerer come from. And Reign of the Reaper, the new album, is absolutely brilliant. So that's the first one. I was also quite impressed by the new Overland album from Steve Overland. It's a collaboration with Robert Saul. Our esteemed editor's certainly getting his panties all wadded in a bunch over it. But it is very, very good. It's if you're looking for something like an original FM sound, it's very much in that sort of vein. It's well done, well sung, well put together. Offers nothing new, but it's just great feel-good songs in an FM vein. The new Angra, I've always been a bit of an Angra fan, Brazilian power metal band that's sort of one of the few bands that held the candle for melodic metal in the early 90s. Their new album called Cycles of Pain is very, very good. In terms of reading material, I've got a number of books queued up, as I generally tend to have these days. One I've actually been reading, it's not particularly new, but it's quite thought-provoking and quite an eye-opener. And while it's not really rock, but it's about the industry as much as anything. And that's called When the Screaming Stops, The Dark History of the Bay City Rollers. And it's as much about them as a triumph of a manufactured product over any real talent, because they had none. I didn't even know they didn't even play on any of their songs up until I think Bye Bye Baby. It was all done by studio musicians. But it's as much a story about the dark underbelly, the history, and their manager was probably one of the most insidious sexual predators this side of Jimmy Savile. So it really is a bit of an eye-opener. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it at the moment. But I've got the new Gary Moore biography lined up. I've got one or two more. So I've still got plenty to read. So if I ever find myself with a spare 5 minutes, which is increasingly rare at fireworks, but hey.
Who comes up with these things about these labels? Doom metal. That's a new one.
It's something that has retrospectively, it was never called it at the time, but it was something that's retrospectively been implied to Sabbath. They've been kind of credited as the sort of godfathers of it. It's that sort of slow, plodding, relentless wall of sound riff that's doom metal, if you like. But if you listen to Candlemass epitomises it perfectly.
We have some weird titles in our love of music, don't we, guys?
We don't. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, James, go on.
I listened to the new Paul Rodgers album the other day, which is quite entertaining. It's not the greatest thing he's ever done, but for considering it's been something like 22 years since his last solo album, it's a nice return to form. His voice is still excellent. Some of the songs you're like, yeah, that's got a sort of Bad Company feel to it. It's quite bluesy rock. It's just Paul Rodgers, really, which is always nice. It's nice to hear him back because he hasn't done anything for ages, and that's a shame because he's one of the greats. So yeah, Midnight Rose. That just got released literally about this week. I think it came out. That's quite good. The other thing I've been listening to, it won't be everybody's cup of tea, but it certainly is mine, is William Shatner's Ponder the Mystery, which is a reissue, but it's a different. Out of all the Shatner albums, this was the one I didn't like. And the reason being, it was done with Billy Sherwood. And Billy Sherwood overstepped the mark, in my opinion, because when Shatner does an album, normally, he has somebody as a musical foil, and he writes the lyrics and the stories and stuff, and he narrates them in his Shatner style, and the music is done to fit. And the album he did with Ben Folds has been successful. And Ben Folds did exactly what I just described. Whatever William Shatner had written, he worked around it and made it sound right. When Billy Sherwood came in for Ponder the Mystery, that was supposed to be Shatner's like prog rock album. And it's absolutely loaded with guests. There's Steve Vai on there, there's Edgar Winter on there, there's Vince Gill on there, loads of top names. But the problem was Billy Sherwood would sing on every track. And when I put on a William Shatner album, I don't want Billy Sherwood singing on every track in the same vein as anybody listening to World Trade doesn't want Shatner popping up every 5 minutes to start doing a dramatic reading. It was just like Billy Sherwood, like, I think he thought it was like some sort of equal partnership, and it's not. All the music he wrote was great, but he kept jumping in with these like vocal bits. I'm like, piss off. You're not what I've bought the album for. And I can't be alone in this opinion, because the new version, it came out and it was like Ponder the Mystery Revisited, and it was supposed to be remixed. And I was like, of all the albums to remix, why pick this one? But what they've done is the Sherwood vocal bits have now gone. So it's more to deliver what Shatner was talking about in the first place. All the music's still there, and the music Billy Sherwood has done is brilliant. It works perfectly, but his vocals were just getting in the way. So that absolutely fixes this. And it is almost like getting a new Shatner album, which is always a good thing for me. But I appreciate it so much more now because I haven't got this distraction, this other musician chipping in every 5 minutes. So if you like Shatner, which I know not everybody does, but if you do, and you was the same as me, he's like, would have been all right if there'd have been a bit less Billy Sherwood. Now there is. So that is actually a really good album.
Come on, Pete, your turn. What you were listening to?
Well, I mean, the music I've listened to recently is more of a pop rock thing, and James and I have both agreed that we quite actually like this album. It's Tempt, their sophomore album, because James already pointed out, their first one wasn't really much to write home about, but the second one is just brilliant. It's if you like pop rock, you know, it's that kind of thing, you know. It's very, very good. Very Def Leppard-y in some parts, I thought, but certainly worth a listen. It's never going to win them any prizes, let's be fair, but you know, as to put something on and just to listen to it, it's very, very good. But I've actually read a book as well. Everyone stand back in horror, I know. And it was the Billy Idol one, his autobiography. Now, I mean, I love Billy. The only problem I've got with it is that forever in a day in that book, he's saying, I've been coked out of my brains, I've taken more drugs than whatever, and he lists every single drug he's taken. Yet he can remember lots of stuff in absolutely amazing clarity. So for someone that's absolutely banged out of his brains on drugs and various other whatnots, and according to the book, does a lot of the banging as well, in various other means and various other transports. He's got an amazing memory for someone that was absolutely stoned out of his head for God knows about 30 odd years, which you do tend to think, you know, all right, have you exactly remembered this, how it happened? I mean, he does point in this thing that he's had lots of conversations with people, but you do tend to think, hang on a minute, you know, on 1 minute you're saying you absolutely whacked out your brain on coke and you couldn't remember who you were, what you were singing, what day of the week it was, but yet you can remember, you know, what meal you had and what time of the day something happened. So I don't know, but it is a good read, I must admit. I did enjoy it, and you know,
He might have brought some AI into writing the bits he couldn't remember.
it's done a bloody good job. That's all I can say. It just makes me laugh. You know, he's got very specific memories about certain things, and then the next sentence it was, And then I did a whole line of coke, and I can't remember what happened until the following Tuesday. And you think, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I have problems remembering what I had for tea yesterday. So do you remember 30 odd years ago? And I'm not on drugs. Well, after this, I might be. You never know.
I got the same impression when I read Ozzy's book, actually. There's some of the stuff that he remembered with absolute clarity there, and the story starts, I were pissed out of my head or whatever. You think, yeah, okay, I did that happen then? But
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
Entertainment.
I
Indeed.
was going to say, when I read Glenn Hughes' autobiography, it is actually rang true, because he always said the 80s was like his lost decade. And there's very little about the 80s in his book. And that makes sense because he can't remember it.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I was a bit disappointed. Well, obviously not that it happened. I mean, the accident that Billy Idol suffered that obviously changed his life quite a lot. He does mention it, but he doesn't go into sort of like a lot of detail as into how it changed his life. You kind of get that. Right, I've had a bike accident. This happened. That happened. And then all of a sudden, I was much better as a human being. That kind of thing. You think, well, hang on a minute. You're very good at telling us how you partook in a wee bit of exercise with a lady in the toilets in the plane doing 35,000 miles an hour for the best part of 2 pages. Yet we don't get an awful lot of how you've changed your personality after coming off your bike and suffering a near-death experience. Which, I suppose that probably doesn't sell as many books as Who You Banged Where, really.
Having not read the book myself, when he talks about the bike accident, does he tell about what he was supposed to have done had that bike accident not have happened in terms of his career? Because he was going to be the Terminator. In Terminator 2, he was going to be the T-1000. And it was all set. It was going to be him and Schwarzenegger. And then he had this massive bike smash, and he was in no shape to do it. And they started recasting, and James Cameron had already basically made his mind up. It was going to be Billy Idol and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And there was like, who else did we audition? So they started looking back, and that's why they went for Robert Patrick, because James Cameron said his audition was he literally just came in and stared at me, and it unnerved me. He says, I want that guy. Otherwise, it would have been Billy Idol.
Yeah, it does briefly touch on it, but not as much as various other exploits that you think, well, that could have sort of been halved, and more of the other stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance, isn't it? Really, it's between telling a story and telling too much. I always think it's one of those things. Are they better leaving you having read it wanting more, or are they that you get to page 550 and you think, Christ, when are this lot going to shut up? I've read a number. I mean, that have gone on for far too long, and is it one of them leave them wanting more? Because you can always do a book too.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Which I'm sure Brian Johnson is well aware of, having read his recent autobiography, because it only really goes up to Back in Black, and an awful lot's happened since then.
Mm-hmm. Well, then, I don't know if you remember, listeners, a while ago, I set these gentlemen a task of doing their fantasy band, their ideal band, who they would like in it. And we come to the point now where we can actually name the drummers. So just to recap, Dave in his band had a prime David Coverdale as his singer, Gary Moore as a guitarist, and Billy Sheehan as his bass player. And James had Jolyn Turner as his singer, Paul Gilbert as his guitar player, and Glenn Hughes as a bass player. So today we are going to unmask the drummers. So James, who is your God of Thunder, your beater of the skins?
Natural choice, Roger Taylor.
Oh,
the reason being, he's a phenomenal drummer, he's a really good singer, and he's a songwriter. So he fits into my band just beautifully, because all my guys write songs, all my guys sing. So I'm thinking along the lines of, the Beatles had 4 individuals that all contributed different things. Queen were exactly like that. Even, you could even say that about The Who, where you had 4 very strong individual personalities. That's what my band's got. And I know that if one of them fell short on the songwriting, 3 others could pick up the slack, no bother.
Okay. And Dave, go on then. Who is your man behind the sticks?
Bearing in mind I got wrapped over the knuckles when I picked Gary Moore, I thought I'd better pick somebody who's alive. So that ruled out a number of candidates. Certainly ruled out Cozy Powell, who would have probably been my first choice. Or somebody like Neil Peart. But so it came to a bit of a decision, two completely different players in the end. My first thought was that, okay, not denigrating drummers, but he's a drummer. You want somebody who's rock solid, somebody who's dependable. So I thought along the lines of somebody like Harry James. But ultimately, I thought, nah, it's Dave, it's your band, it's Fred and his exploding testicle. You need someone with a little bit more showmanship, a little bit more dynamic. So I would probably err towards Mike Portnoy.
Oh,
okay.
He's technically can play. He's proved he can play anything. Plays on anything. He's a great organizer. He's a great. He can work with any sort of rhythm team. He can work with any sort of genre, really. I don't know if you ever. I don't know if either of you guys are particularly Dream Theater fans, but to give you sort of some idea of just how good of musicians they are, I don't know if they actually did a show once that you can get on CD where they effectively played Dark Side of the Moon. So they just played Dark Side of the Moon through, and it's just perfect. So I thought, now this guy, if you're gonna have it, he now to me is the drummer that people need to aspire to. Yes, he's very technical, he's very flash, but he's solid. And again, he would chip into the songwriting. He would add direction. He would add all sorts to it. So yeah, Mike Portnoy.
The Dream Theater did that with Made in Japan as well, didn't they?
Yeah. And they did a couple of others that I forget. But yeah, what always used to get me about Dream Theater is that you could go and see a whole tour, and lots of bands. If you got tickets for a number of dates on the tour, you'd see the same set night after night. You could do that with Dream Theater, and you would never get the same set twice. And so for a band to be able to play that vast catalogue of songs, and to be able to say, well, we'll pick that one tonight, that one over there, this one here, and mix and match like that, it's just amazing. It's just stellar musicianship. Yeah, I'd go with Portnoy.
I was trying to get. I mean, he's an awesome choice. I was trying to guess who you'd pick as your drummer.
Yeah.
And I thought you'd go Ian Pace because he was with Whitesnake and he was with Gary Moore.
I did think about that. Yeah, he would have been one of the choices. But as I say, there are some great drummers out there. But I kind of knew you go with Roger Taylor, so that was a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
But then again, these days he could be in any number of bands because most of them are.
Yeah, Roger's obviously my favourite, but in terms of drummers, I love Ian Pace. I was a big fan of Pat Torpey.
Yeah.
Cozy Powell, like you said, was phenomenal. Harry James is a hugely underrated shout.
Absolutely, he's a great drummer. Is Harry James. I've just had a thought actually. Throwing us back to the AI debate, could or should we get AI to write the next Motley Crue album? There you go.
Oh heck, here we go. Yeah. Saucer of milk, table one.
I imagine if you gave AI the last sort of stuff that Motley Crue had done, it'd just sit around and go, that's crap, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, probably.
We all know it'll come up with a Windows fatal error message, blue screen of death. Oh, we love them so much. Right, okay. Moving swiftly on from that lawsuit. Yeah, these bands are sounding interesting. It'd be interesting to, obviously with Gary Moore and Dave's propensity for breaking the rules. We won't be able to find out what that one will sound like, but I must admit, there's some interesting musical styles being mashed in there. So the next time, chaps, it's your keyboardist, and that'll be the last one. So think of who you'd like to be tinkling the ivories, as they say. And then you have to think of a name, and obviously what style of music you would be playing. Right, so let's do some questions. Let's see if these gentlemen know as much about rock and metal music as they claim that they do. Question for you, chaps. Each member of Nirvana was kicked out of the Nevermind release party for doing something. Can you think what it was?
Certainly wasn't being able to play cogently as a band with any sort of music that people would want to hear, but there you go. I've got no idea, Pete.
I haven't either, because I've never heard this story. And I have a real problem with grunge generally, just because it destroyed the scene that I sort of grew up listening to. So I don't know. It'd probably be something really dull and wearing plaid, I imagine.
Was it something that they did collectively or individually, Pete?
It was something they did collectively.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. It wasn't rock and roll at all.
No, you got me there.
Yeah. Well, they started a food fight and got kicked out of their own release party for basically everybody having a complete free-for-all, lobbing food around this very expensive place.
Wow. That's one of the lamest rock and roll anecdotes I've ever heard.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah. Funny enough, that one never gets mentioned very much, does it, eh?
Well, so that wouldn't get much mileage in Billy Idol's Band of the Food, would it?
No. Smashing a TV? No, we threw a ghetto.
Yeah.
Right then.
Not even driving a Morris Minor into a dog bowl or something like that.
No. It was Dodge the Flying Eclair. That's what it was. Right then, listeners. So well done if you got that one. If you want to take part, here's a question for you guys. So Axl Rose used to earn $8 an hour by doing something for a science experiment at UCLA. Do you know what it was that he earned $8 an hour for? If you think you know, leave your answer or your guess down in the comments below, and obviously we will let you know on the next podcast if you've got it right or not. Right then, so this is probably going to be a bit of an extended edition of Pyrotechnics because mainly us three are crap at keeping time. So if you think it's going to be an hour long, I think you can probably think again. But obviously, thank you for listening and thank you for joining in. As we said, issue 104 is a sellout online now. So thank you very much for all the people that have bought it, for making it one of our most successful editions. You can still buy some copies in WH Smith's, McCall's, and other good news agents. So if you do want a copy, I'm afraid you're going to have to get out on your feet and go get them. You can get a digital download, again, going to fireworks-magazine.com and buying the digital download. And that's it. That's all we've got time for. Now, we're hopefully going to come back in the next couple of weeks with some special guest ones. I know that both James and Dave are working on some musicians to come and speak to us. You're not going to be disappointed. The names that these chaps have dug up is absolutely amazing, and they're going to be two great interviews. So hopefully they'll be coming out soon. But for tonight, chaps, I'd just like to say thank you for joining me. Thank you for such an interesting debate on musical AI. I think we all agree that that is going to go on for a long, long time. And something that we've rightly got to keep an eye on as well, especially obviously in what we do as well, because we don't want fooling by Freddie and his exploding testicles or his exploding scrotum, whatever it was. And I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of the readers that we have as well will be equally as aghast if they get taken for a ride by AI. So I have been Pete Arnett. I've been your host for this podcast. I'd just like to say goodbye to our deputy editor, Dave. Thank you very much, Dave, for joining us.
Yeah, goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
And also thank you as well to our art editor, James. James, it's been a pleasure as ever.
Absolutely. Always enjoy it. Thanks for listening.
So people, keep listening to that music you listen to. That's why we do it. We love it. So that's why we listen to it. And go and have some fun. It's been a bit of a miserable time with obviously people like Bernie Marsden passing away, another great that we've lost. So go out and enjoy whatever you do. Until next time, everybody, take care.
Thanks for listening.
All views heard in this podcast are from the individual and do not necessarily represent those of Fireworks Rock and Metal Magazine.